Ever since around chapter 3, people have always expected the next installment of Poppy Playtime to be the end. I don't know why, people just do. Oh, chapter 3 may be the end of the franchise. Listen, chapter 4 is definitely going to be the end of the franchise, guys. Listen, the story's going to end with Poppy Playtime chapter 5 in the reveal of the prototype. People are always wrong. But you know what, let's humour that mentality for a second. If Poppy Playtime was going to end, how? That was the question I asked myself, and I came up with 6 different ways that Poppy Playtime could potentially end. And these don't have to be in the upcoming chapter 6 either, they could be in 7, 10, 12, however long the story goes on for. Some of them are specific to chapter 6, but some of them are open-ended. So without further ado, I'm Kirbyster Plays, subscribe if you would like to, and I would love it if you did. Here are 6 different ways Poppy Playtime could end. We know that in order to beat the prototype, we need something called a negation compound. Something about the poppy gas being highly flammable and being able to destroy the prototype, finding this compound, etc. At the end of chapter 5, we recruited the Doctor. He is the only one that knows the secret to creating this negation compound, so actually it was a very coincidental ending. This ending is quite interesting because it works either way. The Doctor stays on our side and there's some kind of Doctor redemption arc, or the Doctor turns on us and fights with the prototype. Either way, the reason why Giblet was left alive is because they'll be the new kind of Poppy character. You know, a smallish character that can provide commentary and intel and stuff like that. I mean, why else would they keep him alive? Poppy will appear. I'm gonna go ahead and say Kissy had a fake out death as well, or else that was very anticlimactic. So with us, the player character, Giblet, Poppy and Kissy overwhelming the Doctor and the prototype, we're able to use the negation compound, destroy them, destroy all of the evil toys and escape the playtime facility. But the question is, you know, this is true for all of these different solutions. What happens to the toys after the franchise? We know that there could be a Poppy Playtime spin-off in Japan and stuff like that, but would Poppy be there? Would there be another Poppy there? What happens to our Poppy? Like, they can't exactly blend in, you know, after we escape. It's the same with Giblet as well, they'll probably sacrifice themselves, Kissy may actually be dead, so it's just what happens to Poppy. We can't turn people back into humans, or can we? Possible ending number 2 is that we are Elliot. The way that we seem to confidently know the layout, some characters recognize us, some characters don't. The prototype has at least been programmed to believe that they are the son of Elliot Ludwig, and therefore Poppy's brother. But the whereabouts of Elliot, we don't know. It would be an interesting kind of family reunion. What makes this theoretical ending so interesting is the way that they could reveal we are Elliot. Documents, a character mentioning them. The way I think would be the most interesting is if our player character speaks and we know from the voice that we are Elliot Ludwig and it isn't explicitly stated anywhere. That would be quite cool. I just think that would be cool. Potential ending number 3 is that Poppy turns on us and is the main villain of the franchise. I've always thought that Poppy's changing personality was weird. How they seemed to be evil and sinister at the end of chapter 2 and a lot of people wrote them off as a villain, only for them to help us in chapter 3, help us in chapter 4, feel sad for Dowie, help us in chapter 5. Their eye colours changing, it's just so interesting. So let's say that in chapter 6 we work on the negation compound with the Doctor, it's ready for use, and then Poppy appears halfway through the game and stops us using it. They kill Giblet and side with the prototype, saying that they cannot be killed. It's then revealed that Harley Sawyer and Elliot Ludwig were actually closer friends than we think. Whereas Harley Sawyer's consciousness was uploaded into the Doctor so that they could live forever, Elliot Ludwig was doing their own experiments on how to live longer and escape this mortal realm. Elliot Ludwig fused their consciousness with Poppy and put themselves in a glass case, leaving the prototype to orchestrate the Hour of Joy. This would mean that Poppy's reaction to the Hour of Joy VHS at the end of chapter 3 was a fake out, which I've always believed. It's quite interesting. I don't know if the final battle would then be us versus Poppy. I don't know if Poppy would be in the icon for chapter 6 like they were for 5. I just thought it was a really interesting idea that could be real. Basically, the hallways in the lower levels of Playtime Co. are abandoned, but at one point, employees would have had to get from the ground level all the way down to where we are now. We discovered that they did that through a giant elevator that goes from the bottom level all the way back up to the top. After successfully defeating the prototype with the negation compound and either overcoming Poppy or not, we escape into the elevator and make our way back up, rediscovering locations from previous chapters. Two of the villains we know are still alive, other than Boogiebot and Catbee, are Pugapilla and Boxyboo. They haven't been used in a chapter, or they're still alive. So as we make our way back up in this giant employee elevator, we finally encounter Boxyboo, and they are the main chase sequence at the end of the game. We experience a withered PJ Pugapilla chase as well, but we don't realise we're in that location until the iconic chase music starts playing again. And we have to do another kind of musical statues segment like in chapter 2. Eventually we make our way back up to the top, and we make our way out through a door that was inaccessible in chapter 1 called the Stairway to Hell door. We know that parts of the Stairway to Hell door were modelled. This is something that Mob has thought about. I just thought that was a cool idea. That's all I'll put to that. The fifth potential ending is that a character we don't know has all the answers. We might as well face it, every chapter has introduced a new villain that hasn't been mentioned in the game before that has a massive amount of importance. In chapter 3 we were introduced to the Smiling Critters and Catnap. Nobody in chapter 1 or 2 mentioned them. Their names never came up. In chapter 4 we were introduced to Doughy. Chapter 1, 2 and 3 never mentioned Doughy. In chapter 5 we were introduced to Chum Chompkins that wasn't even in the promotional material for that game as far as I can remember. And Chum was massively important as well. So it's fair to believe that chapter 6 will have its own original villain in it as well. And chapter 7, 8, 9, however long this goes on for. Let's go ahead and say that if Poppy is their own character, that Elliot Ludwig uploaded their consciousness into someone else, into a toy we haven't seen yet. Some kind of toy incinerator room. I'm thinking maybe like a broken teddy bear. And that character is able to give us all of the answers we want, referring to the lore, the way to beat the prototype, using the negation compound properly, and also offering us a way out. It would be a bit of a cop-out, but it would also kind of work, you know? But it's the sixth and final potential ending for Poppy Playtime that could be the most seismic. What if the ending for the franchise never gets made? Poppy Playtime was supposed to end in chapter 5, we know that for a fact. Because of changes within Mob Entertainment, they've decided to keep the story going. At the time of recording, we know that there is a Poppy Playtime spin-off on the way. We also know that maybe chapter 6 is coming out in February. They're also working on the Poppy movie adaptation, by the way. Even if the spin-off does really well and chapter 6 is the most highly reviewed installment in the franchise, they've got a full plate. It's realistic to believe that Mob's limited resources could be reallocated. Making a movie is an unbelievable, timely, costly task. It's therefore easy to believe that after the spin-off, the next main installment is delayed and delayed and delayed. And the worst possible reality is that the ending of the franchise, whether it's chapter 9, 10, 11, just isn't made by then. I mean, we're thinking years down the line. I hate to think about that, but it's a possibility. What if Poppy Playtime just never ends? And let me be clear, this doesn't have to be a negative. They can keep the story going as much as they want. We can get down to chapter 25 and the story is still going because they keep coming up with new ideas. Whether or not people buy or play the games at that point is a different question. I don't know how I would react to the franchise just being an endless story. There is an ending here and a finite amount of lingering questions. If they can round up the Poppy Playtime story, if not in chapter 6, then the next couple of chapters, I think that's the best way to avoid this potential ending. By stringing along the story too long, you risk never seeing it through, especially when your plate is as full as it is right now for Mob Entertainment. Out of all of these endings, the one I really hope is real is the one where we go up the employee elevator and rediscover areas of past games. I would love to encounter a withered PJ Pugapilla, a Boxyboo, just to bring it full circle. If this is about how the franchise definitively ends, it's all about bringing closure. But there is so much coping in that particular ending. That's like my ideal ending to the franchise, realistically. Because we know the franchise won't continue into the movie or into a book series at the moment. They could round things off with us beating the prototype, but honestly, I don't think even they know how the franchise is going to end at the moment. So any of these could be real, all of them could be wrong. I'd be very excited to see if they think of something completely left field that none of us were expecting. And I do want to clarify, this doesn't mean the franchise is ending with chapter 6. It could go on to 10, 15, 20 and onwards. So that's it, or at least it would be. I actually have a secret 7th way that the franchise could end. Just in case you thought a Dr. Redemption arc was at all possible, let me remind you of something. Harley Sawyer has double-crossed everyone that he has ever worked with. So let's say that in chapter 6 we enlist the Doctor's help and we're able to make the negation compound. But the Doctor reveals that there's only enough compound to either defeat the prototype or to cure the player character of whatever issues were caused by being dropped in that vat of goo at the end of chapter 5. It clearly messed with us and caused a lot of problems. We don't know the depth of it yet. This decision of whether or not to use the compound to destroy the prototype but sacrifice yourself, or use the compound on yourself and find a different way to defeat the prototype, leads me to believe that chapter 6 or any future installment could have multiple endings. Wouldn't that be awesome and different if the final installment had a good ending and a bad ending? In this case, the bad ending would still give quite a lot of closure to the franchise. We're able to use the compound to destroy the prototype, but there isn't enough to sustain us, so we die and sacrifice ourselves as well. Poppy is then able to take the prototype's place, lead Playtime Co. and liberate the toys once and for all. Maybe another twist villain, but I don't think so. In this case, the good ending is very open-ended. We're able to either make more of the compound or we're able to survive and find a different way to take the prototype down. And also the Doctor, I guess. This is where the idea ends. I'm just opening up the idea of having a chapter with multiple endings. It's something that Mob would only be able to do in a final installment. And there you have it. Those are 6 different potential endings for Poppy Playtime. Save this video, like it, because we may be right. I'm going to be coming back to this video after every main installment comes out to see just how close we really were. Thank you to the Kirbyster Plays channel members. Please subscribe if you would like to, and I would love it if you did. I'm Kirbyster Plays. Bye bye, bye, bye bye, bye.